has little to offer. The stage is set, people are frightened, and every quack out there knows it. As the AIDS epidemic grows, so does the network of AIDS fraud. Charlatans who advertise mostly by word of mouth, although some are bolder than that. They feed on despair, and it's so very simple. When you've been given a death sentence, you'll try anything, from the unproven to the unbelievable.
An AIDS patient came in just recently. He was practically dying. And in less than 15 minutes, he opened his eyes and was feeling so good. He said, "I like looking at pretty girls." I said, "You're crazy. You just came in here half dead. What you talking about looking at pretty girls?" That's how quick he responded, because the body accepts things electrically. Life is electrical.
And death from AIDS avoidable, Dr. Sadie claims.
The mucus is clogged in the nasal passage.
Dr. Sadie isn't a doctor. He's an herbalist, a man from Honduras who brought his bag of miracles to Brooklyn. His cure for AIDS starts at $500. It's the same regimen of diet and herbs he prescribes for everything, including this woman's sinus problem.
Your heart beats fast once in a while. It picks up a beat or two. Now, how do I know all of that? Because everybody has the same disease. I am asked, how am I curing these disease? Some people call me scientist, some call me voodoo man, some call me a whole bunch of stuff.
I would call him part of a growth industry that we will see related to the exploitation of the AIDS virus. People out there who are prepared to market hope and sell it at premium prices.
Virginia Apuzzo is New York's Deputy Commissioner of Consumer Protection. She learned of Sadie's cure the same way his AIDS patients did. She read his ad in the newspaper.
When you advertise that you can do something that you can't do, and then you charge $1,300 for it, you know, we call that consumer fraud.
Sadie says he's cured 7 people with AIDS. When asked for proof, he offers up the case of a Boston man.
Frank left Boston and took a cross-country trip, happy as a lark, because the doctor told him he's free of AIDS. He came back to Boston with a slight fever that they could not understand. The infection had gone too far. I was there too late. Frank died. But the doctors in Boston told me, you know, he didn't die with AIDS. I'm happy to tell you, Dr. Sadie, that you cured him of AIDS. I said, thank you very much.
But Frank Knight's doctors and his death certificate say something very different. Both confirm Frank Knight died with AIDS.
People fall for this stuff. How come? The question becomes, how much are you willing to pay for hope? And in a desperate situation, in a situation in which you feel there is no hope, the answer is probably anything you have and then some.
Doors closing, doors opening, doors closing.
There is a desperate need for hope in Houston, Texas, which has the 4th largest population of people with AIDS in the country.
I am safe, it's only change.
Desperation is what drew Roy to this healing group. When he's not trying to sing away his sickness, he's grinding up wheatgrass in his kitchen on the advice of a nutritionist.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a green drink.
Roy believes the green drink will make him well, but he's not counting on it alone. He also takes the experimental drug AZT, the only AIDS treatment approved by the government.
This is the AZT that I take.
Is there any irony, you think, to the fact that in one hand you're holding traditional medication and the other hand you're holding
an alternative? The nutritionist would say baloney to the pills. The doctor would say baloney to the green drink.
So what do you say?
I want to live.
Roy is terrified. He's given a diagnosis that, for all he knows, means he will die.
Dr. Richard Conklin is Roy's physician. As an infectious disease specialist, he treats AIDS patients. As a psychiatrist, he understands them.
He's going to run to everyone who offers him any hope. And Roy goes to psychic healers and nutritionists and Dr. Hitt.
Do you wish that he weren't going to see Dr.
Yeah, I think Dr. Hitt's treatment is probably harmful.
We have 70 AIDS patients, and we have only had 2 AIDS patients who have come down with secondary opportunistic infections. I would say that this would be well above any standards.
William Hitt is a man full of claims. He claims to be an immunologist who's found a natural treatment for AIDS. His patient's urine is filtered and a byproduct re-injected at $100 a shot, 1 shot per week, indefinitely. He claims he hasn't had time yet to scientifically verify his results, but he did find time to advertise them.
It says here the clinic has proven and promises to extend indefinitely the hope of life for many AIDS victims. What do you mean when you say promises to extend indefinitely?
Well, I didn't write that, but I again...
You didn't approve, though, this?
I think I read that.
Because I was curious as to what that meant. Promises.
From what we're seeing in our ongoing study, that I would certainly think that we would be able to promise that we could extend the life of those patients.
Tabulate the results. What did it take, an evening to sit down and do the statistics and put them out there? You may have treated 100 patients, maybe 200. He can put those results together in a matter of hours.
That's what we're doing right now.
That's what you're doing now.
That's what we're doing right now.
With Dr. Bennett.
With Dr. Bennett. Mm-hmm.
But when we called Dr. Michael Bennett, a Dallas immunologist, he said there is no study. Hitt's story, he told us, is purely wishful thinking, and Hitt's claims don't end there.
I've certainly gone out and discussed this with a great number of people, and I've invited people all over to come in and look and see what we're doing.
To hear you tell it, you have extended yourself out to the medical community and said, hey, I think I'm on something here. Yes. Why don't we talk about it?
I think I would go talk about this at a county fair.
He's never offered to meet with any of us in the community. We would love to sit down with him and discuss our results and compare his results and see what's going on. We'd love it. There's another reason that data is not available to us.
And that reason is?
I don't think it exists. I think it's hokey.
Well, do you think he's doing it just for the money?
Why else? If it was for fame, he'd send his stuff to the Nobel Committee. If it was for altruism, he'd share it with New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles and Zaire and every place else that had AIDS. So it's not altruistic and it's not for fame. What else is there? $5 grand for a series of injections.
Hitt says he's not making money from the treatments, but almost everything about the man we can verify contradicts what he says, down to his basic credentials. Hitt's patients at his immunotherapy clinic know he's not an MD, but they are told he has a PhD from Johns Hopkins University.
When we asked Johns Hopkins, they said that you don't have any PhD from Johns Hopkins.
Well, I'm sorry, because I certainly do. I mean, in what particular year did you ask them?
They go back to the 1890s in their records, and they have no record of a William Hitt getting a PhD in applied biology or anything else there.
Well, I certainly have that. You might put down the name Dr. Valentine, too.
Dr. Valentine?
Valentine, B-A-L.
We did call Dr. Robert Valentine, a professor emeritus at Johns Hopkins. He knew Hitt when both were members of a local flower society, but Valentine says Hitt has no degree of any kind from the university.
How do you react to those doctors in Houston who say that you're a quack?
I don't know. I guess a quack has got to practice medicine, but I'm not practicing medicine, so...
I think that you understand what I mean, though. They think that treatment's phony.
Okay, they're trying to say the treatment doesn't work.
They're not simply questioning the treatment, they're taking it a step further and saying you're preying on people.
Well, I think in something like this, I think you would just have to ask the patients themselves. And I think that's the only proof.
This is the first place I've gone to where they said there was hope. So I'm going to stay here.
There is no doubt Hitt's patients want to believe in him. One of them spoke out as we were ending the interview. He asked not to be seen, but he did want to be heard.
My body's producing this. I'm not rejecting it. My body's using it. And I'm living. And whereas before I was sick and looked like I should go on and just put my arms across my chest and lay down, death with dignity. Well, I'd like to live with some dignity instead of dying with it.
That's what Jim Beecher wanted, and it cost him everything. Beecher was president of Houston's AIDS Foundation, an unlikely candidate for fraud, until he met up with this man, James Douglas. Douglas promised him what no one else could, a cure for AIDS based on psychic healing and herbal capsules. He promised David Jones the same thing, but the capsules made Jones sick and suspicious. He sent them to a state lab for analysis.
These quote-unquote herbal capsules actually contain heavy metals, lead, chromium.
Did anyone from the lab tell you what that could do to you?
Well, heavy metals have a tendency to actually short-circuit the brain, from my understanding.
The analysis came too late to help Jim Beecher. Last January, he began to have trouble breathing. Douglas told him it was just part of the cure. It was actually pneumonia. But by the time Beecher was put in a hospital, no one could save him. Dr. Conklin was a consulting physician on the case and met up with Beecher's healer.
My encounter with him was walking into the intensive care unit and finding this man in a clerical collar standing at the foot of the bed with alligator clips on 2 toes and wires coming off these clips. And I said, gee, what are you doing? And he said, I'm communicating with his unconscious. And I said, well, the man's brain dead. And he says, no, I communicate with him, and he wants you to play his favorite opera.
6 months after Jim Beecher's death, James Douglas's clinic was still open. Authorities were reluctant to investigate, one of them told us, because they were afraid of catching AIDS. By the time the Attorney General was ready to press charges, Douglas had skipped town. No one knows where he is now or if he's still practicing. As for Dr. Sadie, he was scheduled to appear in a New York court this morning, charged with the unauthorized practice of medicine and false advertising. Dr. Hitt is currently under investigation by the Texas Attorney General's office, but that hasn't stopped his patients. Ironically, it's the victims themselves who are most reluctant to recognize the fraud. Hope, it seems, is hard to let go of, even when it may be false hope.
They believe. They think this will help. And you can stand there and tell them this is lead and it'll poison you, and there are a certain number who believe it will help. It's desperation.